Right guys, welcome to this pin tutorial, and today I'm going to show you how to turn this Castallax into this. Right, so as I said, the purpose of this tutorial is to show off how I get the rusted, kinda speckled, damaged robot effect here on this Castallax. So, he's had a bath and he's been cleaned and glued together. The bases I get from Demonscapes on eBay. I'll post a link to his page in the description, but it's what all of my Mechanicum are based on. Quite cheap, very nice indeed. So, the first stage is to spray paint. Right, so spraying time. These are the colours I'll be using. Citadel Oxide for the base. And I'll be using Chaos Black to start the Castallax off with. I then top it up with this. This is British Khaki by Plastic Soldier, but I don't fully spray the model with this, and I'll show you what it will do. So, let's get to it. Right, so there we go. Both sprayed up in black and Oxide for the base. We'll move the base out of the way, and now I'm going to use the Plastic Soldier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it in a way that it's not covering all of the crevices and everything underneath, but just to pick off the tops of the the tops of the armor plates and on the side of the arms and everything here. So, because I'm not doing a full spray, literally just nice and light like that, and then that way it's still quite dark and black underneath. That should be pretty much it. Maybe there's a tad on that side. There we go. So let it dry, go and have yourself a cup of tea, and we'll come back when it's dried. Right, so now that he's sprayed and dry, the next stage of the process is to do all of the base colours. So if you see on this guy, the visor is silver, with the front of it done gold. There's bits and pieces between the armour plates that have been painted silver, and the rivets and stuff are gold as well. So that's the next stage, is to get the base colours on. And the colours of choice for the base colours are Balthazar Gold, Leadbelcher for the silver, and of course Baden Black. So let's crack on. Right, so the first few bits and pieces that we're going to do Leadbelcher is just doing some of the armour plates there. Now obviously I am painting him in the same colour scheme as my other ones, so he does tie in nicely. And it's all about just getting the base colours on to start with. Doesn't have to be particularly neat. Ooh, they are robots that are millennia old. They're rusted, they're battered, they're not in a pretty condition. So basically that's what I'm doing, is just adding all of the base colours across them. Like I said, it doesn't need to be pretty at all, so if you get some over the top of other bits and pieces, it doesn't matter too much, because when we get to one of the stages later on, you're going to have colours everywhere. So that's the silver. I'll add a bit more on, and then we'll start on the gold. Right, so there we go with the Leadbelcher done. I'll then use Balthazar Gold to start and pick off little bits and pieces just to add a bit more. So those nuts there on the front of his knees and the feet. Sorry, you can't see that. And then other bits and pieces to highlight as well, and just pick things out that would possibly be in a different colour. So the little bolts there in the centre, a bolt on the edge there. The beads around his head. And like I said, it doesn't have to be neat in the slightest, and you'll see why once we get all the gold on and get the black on as well. Right, so as you can see, the gold is done, the black is done. I've just picked up the highlights on the gun and some of the pipes and everything there. And the gold I've used to highlight the shoulder pads, the flamers, the nuts and bolts in various places around the armour. Now the next bit is fun, sponge painting. So I'm using this is from one of my carry cases. You can use a sponge from underneath the kitchen sink. Don't let your wife catch you. And we're basically going to be sponge painting with Zandri dust, Runefang steel, and auric armour, because these are very, very light colours. So we'll crack on with the first one of Zandri dust, if the pot will stay open, that is. So all we're doing, a little bit of paint on the edge. Make sure you get rid of a good portion of it, and then literally just sponge paint it on everywhere. And this is why it doesn't matter if your painting isn't very neat. You don't have to be a great painter to get some good looking effects. Literally just go over all the metal, all parts of it, and as long as you're not going on too thick, you get quite a nice effect with it. You don't want too much of each colour on, because you want to be able to see the tone difference between the various shades quite well. So there you go, that's just with the Zandri dust on. We'll then do the same with Runefang steel. Let's use the other end of the sponge. Runefang steel is horribly watery. And I don't know if you can quite see it on camera, you can just see little bits of silver poking through, and I've just broke it. So yeah, just little bits of silver and the metallicness just literally shining through. And again, really not being very neat in the slightest. Just dab it on literally everywhere, over the top of everything. And there you go, you can just see the shine poking through in a few places there. So then, almost last, we have auric gold. I like auric gold because it's so light, it's almost yellow. It's very, very pale gold. And then again, just tapping it ever so lightly, and the sponge kind of leaves that stippled effect all over the place. Really picks out some of the raised bits, and on the flat surfaces leaves it nice and stippled. And like I said, literally just go over every part of the model, the gold, the silver, the black, everything that you've already covered, and paint it on. And there you go, you can see almost instantly it looks very kind of weathered and battered. But that's not the end. Let's move on to the next step. Right, we've got one more layer of sponging to do, and I don't know if there is an equivalent in the GW range, but this is what I have. Vallejo Light Rust. Really nice colour, and like I said, I don't know if there's a GW equivalent, but this is the last colour that we will be using with the sponge painting. And this is quite brown, so I find with this less is more, because sometimes it does go on a little bit too thick. And again, just literally go over all the areas with this, and it literally just picks out, especially on some of the raised edges where you would expect like chipping and things like that. Really just accents them all. See, there you go, a bit much on that side. Then you can just literally dab it off. And there we go, we're almost done. Right, so the next stage, sorry I've jumped ahead a little bit, I thought I'd pressed record on the camera, is Agrax Earthshade. Nice thick brush, literally lather on, cover the entire model, all the armour plates, right in all the cracks and crevices as well. And as you can see, it means that the auric gold and the Runefang steel really shines through. Obviously this one looks quite dark due to the Agrax still being quite wet. Just make sure you spread it out enough so that it's not too dark in some areas. But like I said, literally just cover the entire model with that. So I'll set him down to one side, let him dry. Go and have yourselves a cup of tea and we'll come back when he's dried. Right, so while he's drying, let's have a look at the base. As I said, this base is supplied by Demonscapes from eBay. It does quite a big range of types of bases and for a pretty fair price. So go and check them out. Like I said, I'll post a link in the description. So for the base, we have sprayed the base Rhinox hide. Obviously you could paint it. And then I'm using Scrag Brown as the first layer of dry brush. And the good thing about these bases is they're literally don't need any work at all hardly to look effective. So dry brush and Scrag Brown, literally just dry brush the entire lot. And these bases look phenomenal, like I said, with so little work. First layer down. The second layer I use is Kislev Flesh, just to pick out the highlights and such on there, before moving on to the details of the rest of the base. So, dry brush of Kislev Flesh, just going very lightly over the tops of them. You literally only want to pick up the very top highlight. And there you go, that's literally everything done. I might add a little bit of a bleach bone highlight just to the tips as well, just to highlight that slight bit more and really pick out those raised edges. So there we go, I've added a tiny bit of bleach bone just to highlight the very, very tips of the rubble and things. Now I'm going to do the cog with lead belcher, and again you don't have to be overly neat. I mean, if you look, I'm using an old knackered brush. The key is, obviously I'm going for a very battered and weathered look, so I don't mind if there's a few bits of silver here and there that maybe shouldn't be. It all adds to the effect. And there we go. So the rivets I'm going to do Balthazar Gold, and then I'll give that a wash of Agrax Earthshade as well. Alright, so there we go. We've added the Agrax Earthshade to the cog. The next thing is the rocks, and I'm just painting these up with Abaddon Black. And then what we'll do is we'll highlight those up. I like using the Fang. It's a very bluey grey, and it's not too bright or vibrant, and goes with what I feel is the dullness and the dusty kind of scene that I'm going for with the AdMech. So there we go, we'll let that one dry, and I'll get that one dry brushed up, and then we'll move on to the finishing touches with the Castallax and the base. Right, so here we go, the Castallax is dry. We've got a couple of last little things to do before we do the final highlight, and he's almost finished, and it really hasn't taken me very long at all. So the next colour that I'm going to use is Flash Git Yellow. There we go, and all I'm doing with Flash Git Yellow is I will be just dry brushing the pipes underneath, as all the pipes on my Mechanicum are yellow. Just literally picking off the ridges of all of the pipes. There's quite a few on the underside as well as on the back. There's a couple on his legs and things like that. The reason I like the yellow on top of the black is because it doesn't look too bright. The yellow, the pigment in it, doesn't quite cover all the black or all the dark tones of the rest of the model, which is great because then it doesn't look too kind of fresh and mechanicalized. It still looks very dark and dirty and grimy. So that's those ones. There is some under his legs just there. There's a couple right in there, that skull. And then some just on the gun there as well. There we go. So the final, almost final stage is basically just touching up those bits of skulls. Yeah. Right, so here we go. This is actually Screaming Skull. I said earlier it was bleach bone. It's not. It is Screaming Skull. So again, I like to just add a very, very small dry brush just to the skulls. And again, the pigment means that it doesn't necessarily cover the whole skull, which is fine, because like I said, I'm wanting that very kind of dirty, kind of manky, rusted look. And there we go. So that's almost done. We'll now move on to the last step. Right, so welcome back. We're now at the final stage before we apply the Castallax to the base. And what I use to do the blue oxidized highlights is this. Don't ask me how to pronounce it. I think it's Neolac oxide. But yeah, this is one of the GW technical paints. It's very watery, but it's handy to drag along the edges. So you don't want a particularly large brush or a particularly small one. I'm using a medium layer brush here. But literally with this, because it's quite watery, literally just drag it along the edges and just paint it around some of the edges, and what you find is it'll actually run into place itself. And you don't need to pick up all the edge highlighting, just parts of it here and there. And as you can see, because it's quite watery, the thickness varies from place to place where you apply it, and it really gives that feeling of an old, kind of battered and rusted feel. And like I said, you don't need to pick out all the edges at all, just here and there. Doesn't even have to be any main consistency to it. You don't need it to be symmetrical or anything like that. There you go. So I'll finish him off and show you the finished product. So there we go. I've added all of the nickel oxide. As you can see, just around the feet, the hands, around the rims of the shoulder pads, and the gun tip. Just around the edges as well. So yeah, I think he looks quite nice, very rusty and old-fashioned. I've even added some of the blue nickel to the base as well. So he's pretty much ready to be glued on. But what I'm going to do is, all the rest of my models have some of this on. Army Painter Highland Tuft. And literally, you can pull it out of the packet. Peels off, unless you've got ginormous hands like me, and literally a dab of super glue. So we'll put one there and we'll go there. And now I can't even see where I've put the dab of glue. There we go. And then, it's time to glue the Castallax to his base. So let's work out where he's going to go. Yeah, I'm thinking there. Give him a minute to set. And there we go, folks. One fully painted Castallax, next to no time at all, so using some very basic techniques, but comes out with quite, what I feel is an effective paint scheme. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial, and if you like the look of me at Mech Army, please check out the overview video that I did a few weeks back. I will post a link in the description for that. Massive shout out to Winter's SEO. He was the guy that got me into 30k Mechanicum. Absolutely love the guy to bits. I think his battle reports and his painting tutorials are phenomenal. Please go and check his channel out as well. Again, I will post a link in the description. So thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.